Cena's here! Woo! Kiss stealing, woo! Wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun!
From the past.
I am a real American.
To the present. And the future.
Chair of wheels, more of lawn. Chair of wheels, more of lawn.
You are listening to Penn State's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Marking Out, Comradier's only professional wrestling talk show. I'm Jason Marcus, filling in for Matt Freiler today as your host. But don't worry, alongside with me, I got our friend of the show, Ryan Simpson. So we are in good hands today. We got a lot to talk about here, but before we do anything, first and foremost, I need to say rest in peace to the late great Bruno Sammartino, one of the true icons of the professional wrestling industry, the inspiration for many professional wrestlers. I know, especially in his hometown of Pittsburgh, he is a local hero. Ryan, obviously you are from Pittsburgh. Is there anything that you want to say before we get the show started in respect to the late, great Bruno Sammartino?
Yeah, I mean, you said it very, very well. He was a huge icon in the city of Pittsburgh. Everybody who knew him would go up to see him and just say, hey, how's it going? Like, I was a huge fan of yours, or my family was a huge fan of yours, or you're the reason I started watching wrestling. And he was an icon. He was extremely generous to the city, always stopped for a picture, and he will be truly missed.
All right, rest in peace to Bruno Sammartino. With thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and may God bless his soul. Big show today, guys. We had a lot going on. Obviously, we had the Superstar shakeup. We also have the Greatest Royal Rumble coming up this Friday. But the first thing I want to talk about with you, Ryan, is the split between John Cena and Nikki Bella. Now, usually I don't delve into people's personal lives, but this has been something that's been broadcasted through WWE Storyline on television, on Total Divas. So it's kind of in the forefront of really the world right now in the professional wrestling culture. So there's been some reports coming out that John Cena was the one who ended it, and then there's been some reports coming out that Nikki Bella is the one who ended it. Most recently, that Nikki Bella basically got cold feet, that John Cena got cold feet 3 weeks before they were married, and then Nikki Bella realized, that she really wanted to be a mother and not, didn't want to have to give that up. So I want to get your thoughts on this, Simpson. How much is real? How much is fake? What are your kind of thoughts on this?
I believe the whole thing is real. I don't think that either John or Nikki would kind of play this off as a work or anything like that. As in terms of who ended it, I think it would have been John, just because the little bits of Total Divas that I have seen or that have been played during like the Miz and Maurice feud were John Cena kind of saying that he doesn't want to take that next step yet. So I think the WrestleMania moment, I think John was really on board for it. But then after that, aura kind of faded away from the WrestleMania moment, that it kind of set in that he was going to take this step in not his professional life, but his personal life. And I don't think that John Cena is ready to step away from the professional spotlight just yet. I think he still wants to be that guy. He wants to be the guy for WWE. He wants to be the guy for Make-A-Wish. He wants to be the actor still. So in terms of the entire relationship, I do think it's very real. I'm sorry that it did end, because they were one of the beloved couples across pop culture, really, because of the crossover status of them both. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it works out for the best of them. Maybe they get back together in the future, but hope for the best.
Yeah, now do you see the scenario in which they kind of use this angle in actual WWE storyline? Because it's not past Vince McMahon, the creative team, to do that, and they kind of already were. Especially, they had that iconic moment at WrestleMania 33 almost only a little bit over a year ago where Cena proposed to her. So where do you see this going next time we see Cena on television? Does he mention it? Is it a storyline?
I don't see John mentioning it. I don't see Nikki mentioning it. I think if anybody's going to do it, it'll be whoever Cena's in a feud with, just like The Miz did with
That's
Maurice.
A good point, yeah.
I think they're going to use it as heat, and whether John or Nikki are okay with it, like you said, Vince isn't past doing something like this, so I do think it will be mentioned at some point. Hopefully it is not as harsh as past instances where people have brought up wrestlers' personal lives, but you never know in WWE.
I mean, to be fair, though, one of the greatest feuds of the past 10 years, maybe 15 years at this point, was Edge and Matt Hardy. And
True.
That was very real.
Very
so
personal.
I could very well see a scenario which would be horrible, but if Nikki Bella comes back to wrestle, does she turn heel and align herself with whoever Cena's, that would just, I feel like that'd be a little bit too much.
I could see that being a work. I don't think that the Edge and Matt Hardy thing 2.0 would happen where Nikki would actually start dating another wrestler and then they would feud against Cena. If anything, Vince will be like, hey, go manage so-and-so because they're going to feud with John and it'll be great promo stuff. Kind of like what they did with Deborah and Stone Cold and Triple H back at WrestleMania 17 or whatever, where Vince was like, oh, hey, you're managing The Rock now, and Stone Cold just had to deal with it and go on and just watch his wife manage his biggest rival. So I could see that angle happening. I don't think the legitimate relationship, quote-unquote, would happen off-screen.
No, I saw one thing on the internet that I thought was pretty funny. As soon as the breakup was announced, someone on Twitter, I believe it was, wrote that Dolph was about to cash in his Nikki in the Nikki in the Bank briefcase, and I thought that was kind of funny, but obviously a little low blow, especially too soon.
Yeah, a little bit too soon there.
But anyway, that's enough on that story. I think there's not much more that we can say about it. Obviously, I hope both of those people find happiness in Cena and Nikki Bella. But the big thing that happened this past Monday and Tuesday was we had the official start of the Superstar Shakeup. We saw a bunch of people come over on Monday Night Raw. So this is the full list of the superstars that we saw come over from Monday Night Raw. We had Jinder Mahal, who at the time was the United States champion. We'll get a little bit more into that. We had the Singh brothers. We had the Riot Squad, Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan, and Sarah Logan. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. The Fashion Police and Tyler Breeze and Fandango. Zack Ryder, Natalya, Dolph Ziggler, Drew McIntyre, called up from NXT. The Ascension, Connor and Victor. Baron Corbin, Mojo Rawley, Bobby Roode, Chad Gable as a singles competitor, Ember Moon, and believe it or not, Mike Kanellis, who I did not even know was still under WWE contract, but he's on Raw now. So before we go into our first break, Ryan, I'm going to ask you, out of all those people who moved to Raw, who do you think has the brightest future on the new Red brand?
This might be a little bit of a surprise, but I'm going to go with Ziggler and McIntyre because they debuted as a tag team. And as we'll see going into who moved over from Raw to SmackDown, there's a big gap in the Raw tag division now. And I think a returning Drew McIntyre, who can kind of be the big bully of the tag team, and Dolph, who is a phenomenal talker, who always gets overlooked, I think those two can do very, very well in the tag team scene on Raw and really get a spot to shine on Monday nights.
I agree with you, though. I think it was very interesting to have Drew get called up in such a fashion where he's getting part of a tag team because he had a really good singles run down in NXT. He won the NXT championship. And now you put him with this tag team with Dolph. Obviously, you would think that they'll be one of the major players, like you said, within that tag team division. But at some point, Raw's really stacked now as far as in their singles mid-card and they're very top-heavy in the main event scene. It might be interesting to see if he can find a way to get himself kind of out of that tag team division run if and when they kind of push him in that direction. But I don't know. We'll see. But we'll take our first break here on Marking Out. Stay tuned. You're listening to Marking Out, Comrade's only professional wrestling talk show. We'll see you guys in a couple minutes.
We are stronger, Lions pride, stand together, blue and white. Lions pride, show the world your Penn State side. Lions pride, you live it, you love it, Lions pride.
Shop our winter sale, in-store and online at lions-pride.com and save up to 50% on your favorite Penn State gear from brands like Nike, Under Armour, Champion, and many more.
You live it, you You'll love it, Lions Pride.
If icy roads are slippy or Wawa is your favorite upscale convenience store, tune in to Eastside Westside.
But the priority should be on making sure they don't get it in the first place. Not new laws, not taking guns.
Kim Jong-un knows if he starts a nuclear war, he's not going to win. His country's not going to exist. America can take out North Korea.
Every Monday at 1 p.m., we'll bring you the latest news coming from Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and everywhere in between, with your hosts, Maddie Beer Temple and Steph Crane.
Hey Com Radio listeners, make sure you stay tuned in this week for all of Com Radio's coverage of the best Penn State sport matchups. Wednesday at 5 p.m., Penn State softball takes on St. Francis in a doubleheader with Game 2 scheduled to start at 7:30 p.m. On Saturday, Penn State football's annual blue and white game will kick off at 3 p.m. Don't miss the best way to catch all of your favorite Penn State sports and tune in all week long here on Com Radio.
Now back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Welcome back to Marking Out here on Com Radio. We had the Superstar shakeup happen earlier this week. We talked a little bit about the Raw Superstars or the new Raw Superstars. One thing I want to talk about before we move on to the SmackDown shakeup here is at the very beginning of Raw this past Monday, we saw Jinder Mahal come in as the newly won United States Championship that he won from that Fatal 4-Way at WrestleMania, immediately lost to Jeff Hardy, who then later would go to SmackDown. So I want to get your opinion on this, Ryan. What is the WWE's booking philosophy here, and why do you think that decision was made to have Jinder go from SmackDown to Raw and then have the title go back from SmackDown to Raw back to SmackDown?
I think it was strictly a setup for the Greatest Royal Rumble because I don't think they wanted to pull Seth off of Raw. He has the shirt that says Monday Night Rollins, and once again, Vince loves a guy who sells merch, so you can't just ditch that T-shirt line right there. So I think Jinder going over, losing the belt to Hardy, that pushes Hardy for his singles push, which was bound to happen eventually. They were going to split him from Matt, and then have him going back to SmackDown obviously brings the title back over, brings a big name back over to SmackDown, which then has set up at the Greatest Royal Rumble the rematch so Jinder can go over, beat a big name in Jeff Hardy, and get the U.S. title back in a huge, huge, huge event for the Greatest Royal Rumble.
All right. Well, there you have it. And now let's go over to the SmackDown side. So on SmackDown, going over from Raw to SmackDown, we had The Miz, the iconic duo, Billy Kay and Peyton Royce, who got called up from NXT. Jeff Hardy, along with the United States Championship that we just mentioned. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville from Absolution, so they'll join Paige, who is now the new SmackDown General Manager. Makes sense there. Samoa Joe, which was a big name. Eric Young, Killian Dane, Alexander Wolf from Sanity, called up from NXT. Big Cass, Asuka, The Club, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. Sheamus and Cesaro, The Bar, another big name. R-Truth, and then the latest NXT call-up, Andrade Cien Almas and his business associate, Zelina Vega. So, Ryan, I'll ask you again, out of all those guys who are now going to the blue brand, who do you think benefits the most from this shakeup?
I don't know. This is a split decision on my end. My heart is telling me it'll be The Miz because he's just phenomenal against Daniel Bryan, and I cannot wait to see where they take that now that Daniel Bryan is back in the ring. But my mind is telling me Samoa Joe because there are so many opportunities to have dream matches, as we always coin them, with Samoa Joe on SmackDown. We can get AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe in a WWE ring. That's mental. We can get Joe versus Shinsuke. We can get Joe versus Daniel Bryan possibly, which is going to be absolutely phenomenal. There are just so many different things that now that he is over on SmackDown, we can have these potential dream matches. The absolute hope is just he doesn't get hurt again and he stays healthy so we can have all these matches.
Yeah, I agree. Having Daniel Bryan on SmackDown is a good move. I actually thought he was going to be part of the team that goes to Raw, but I'm glad that they're keeping him on the blue brand to be a major player there. Another person that they're going to have as a major player on SmackDown that's a little bit surprising me is Big Cass. We saw this last night on SmackDown. Big Cass made his return after being injured for several months and immediately was put into the main event picture attacking Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles. What are your thoughts on Big Cass? Do you think you'll be able to succeed in the main event scene, or do you think that this will be a short-lived run?
I think this will be short-lived. We all know that Vince McMahon likes his big guys who are big, tall, and can do lots of things, but at the end of the day, he only flourished because of Enzo and Carmella in NXT, and Enzo carried him on the main brand when they came up night after Mania. So I think he's going to get lost with everybody else on SmackDown in the mid-card. Like, I would love to see a guy like Ty Dillinger get a big push here now that there's a hole. The Miz is coming back in the mid-card, possibly the main event scene. We have Jeff Hardy over there now. We have the Samoa Joe that we just mentioned. Like, there are just so many other guys who I would put in bigger matches other than Big Cass. But we'll see. If they book it the right way, maybe, just maybe, we'll get something good out of Big Cass. But I think throwing him in a feud with Daniel Bryan to start is not a smart move. That's a prized asset of the SmackDown roster. And just coming back from a serious life-threatening injury, and you put him with a guy who is way bigger than him and has a large potential to injure Daniel Bryan. Just doesn't make sense to me.
And again, he's also kind of inexperienced, especially as a singles competitor, because the majority of his career he's been in a tag team with Enzo Amore. Now, granted, in that tag team, he probably carried Enzo Amore in more ways than one as far as wrestling is concerned. So, but no, you're right. It is a questionable decision to have Daniel Bryan's first essential rivalry when he come back to be against a 7-foot inexperienced athlete. But we'll be positive here on Marking Out, and we'll hope that Big Cass can hold his own there. Another person I really want to talk about, specifically on the SmackDown side, is the former NXT champion Andrade Cien Almas. Back in NXT, before he had that matchup with Johnny Gargano at TakeOver Royal Rumble, I was not a Cien Almas fan. I didn't get his character. I didn't think he was entertaining. I didn't even really think that he was that good of a wrestler. Obviously, after he had that match, he elevated his stock probably about tenfold and has since become, one of the biggest stars in NXT and now possibly the main roster. I want to get your thoughts on where do you think Andrade Cien Almas fits in the SmackDown roster? Who do you see him working with? What do you think his potential could be?
I will also be kind of straight up here. I was not a Cien Almas guy. I'm really still not a Cien Almas guy. The match with Johnny was phenomenal. The match with Aleister Black that just happened to take over, also absolutely phenomenal. But now that he's up on the main roster, I don't know where he's going to fit in with Big Cass. I could see him getting a bigger push than Big Cass just because maybe Vince has seen the success that he's had in NXT. But I see him going after the U.S. title. I don't see him going after the tag belts because he needs to establish himself as a star before he possibly flounders to a tag team partner. But I think he has the potential because of Vega by his side. She is going to be a huge role in his success, just like in NXT, on whether he will get over as a heel, because obviously people love to hate people who think they're the best.
Right. And I think that's a good point, too, because I think Zelina Vega was key in getting him over in NXT, and I was happy to see that she was getting called up to the main roster alongside him, because I think separately he isn't as good as they are when they are together. The one thing Cien Almas has going for him, aside from obviously being a very talented professional wrestler, is WWE is still kind of looking for that big Latin American star. They really tried to do it with Alberto Del Rio, and that didn't really work out. They kind of tried to do it with Kalisto, and that was,
even worse.
Even worse, if possible. But Andrade, he's a good wrestler. As a heel, he can get really good heat. So do you see him transitioning at all ever to a baby face? And if so, do you think he'll ever be able to have success?
I do see him trying to transition at one point, because just like with every superstar manager pairing, there's a time where it goes a little bit astray, and that's the perfect time to turn somebody one way or the other. I don't know if he'll have success just because we haven't seen his face work really work out well in the WWE, because when he initially came in to NXT, they tried to have him as a babyface, and he just didn't get over at all. He only really started to gain success and gain some traction in NXT is when he became the big heel character. So whether he'll be able to get over as a heel or a face, I don't question that. It's whenever he comes over full force as that heel guy, whether management's going to get behind him, because obviously Triple H really got behind him in NXT. He really put on a good show with Aleister Black and with Drew McIntyre. Sadly, Drew got injured in that match. I would have loved to have seen another blow-off match there. But Cien, like you said, is a very, very talented performer. I'm doing a little research as we're sitting here, and I see back in 2013, he and Shinsuke put on a 4-star match.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that matchup. But once again, that's going to be management's call on how hard they want to push him. And you made a great point about having a Latin star. The last big Latin star that I can think of that you and I both grew up watching would be Rey Mysterio. He sold merch. The kids loved him.
Ray or Eddie?
Well, yeah, Ray or Eddie. But I think Eddie was more catered to the teenager adult group, where Ray was very, very kid-friendly. And seeing where Cien kind of fits in there, it's going to be interesting. I do think he has the potential to be that face for the Latin audience, but it all comes down to management like it does every single time.
All right, and then one last thing before we take our second break here. I want you to give me one name, one guy from Raw or girl, and one name from SmackDown. Who do you think is most hurt by these shakeups?
On Raw, I'm going to say Bobby Roode.
Okay.
Just because who knows where he's going to fit in. There's a lot of main event talent over there.
I agree.
And seeing where he fits in might be a little bit scary. And I might say the Bar on SmackDown.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, just because SmackDown's been carried by the Usos and the New Day for so long, seeing where the Bar fits in there, and then obviously the Bludgeon Brothers have the belt right now, but seeing where the Bar kind of fits in there and who they go after first might be a little bit scary to see how that picture plays out.
All right, well, we're going to take our quick second break of the show. You're listening to Com Radio's coverage of Marking Out, Pro Wrestling's only talk show here at Penn State.
Yeah, con los 5 sentidos bien puestos, sin emborracharnos, hacemos lo nuestro sin necesidad de abusar de sustancia.
Hi, I'm Isabella. And I'm Laura, and we are the co-hosts of Ellas Llegaron, the first Hispanic talk show here at Penn State.
Tune in for the best Latin music every Monday at 4:30 p.m. Don't miss it.
Tocar esa cintura y hacer que tu piel suba la temperatura.
Hey Com Radio listeners, make sure you stay tuned in this week for all of Com Radio's coverage of the best Penn State sport matchups. Wednesday at 5 p.m., Penn State softball takes on St. Francis in a doubleheader with Game 2 scheduled to start at 7:30 p.m. On Saturday, Penn State football's annual blue and white game will kick off at 3 p.m. Don't miss the best way to catch all of your favorite Penn State sports and tune in all week long here on Com Radio.
We are stronger, Lions pride. Stand together, blue and white. Lions pride, show the world your Penn State side. Lions pride, you live it, you love it. Lions pride.
Lions Pride, locally owned and operated in downtown State College since 1976, offers everything Penn State for every Penn Stater. At Lions Pride, we are Penn State.
Lions pride, you live it, you love it. Lions pride.
Now back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Welcome back to Marking Out here on Com Radio. This Friday, we got the greatest Royal Rumble event coming up exclusively on the WWE Network. It's coming from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. A lot of good matches on this card. It's pretty up there with a WrestleMania card. I want to go over to you, Simpson. Which match on the card are you most looking forward to?
There's just so many. Like you said, it's a stack card just because they are really trying to push this market. But I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to say Brock Roman for this belt because I really have no idea what they're going to do with all of this WrestleMania backlash. I mean, I could see Roman winning it because it's going to be in a country not in North America, and he's going to get cheered. But with Brock signing this new deal, who knows what the stipulations are and stuff like that. I read the other day that Brock's new contract is a per appearance basis. So when WWE calls him, says, hey, we need you for a show, he'll just show up. So as for a long-term storyline, I don't know how much they want to rely on him. But yeah, I think it has to be that Universal title match.
All right, in addition to that, we also have Jeff Hardy versus Jinder Mahal for the United States Championship, The Miz versus Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor versus Samoa Joe in a ladder match for the Intercontinental title, the Bludgeon Brothers and the Usos for the SmackDown tag titles, John Cena versus Triple H for the first time in almost 10 years, The Bar versus Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt for the Raw tag team titles,
Wonderful.
The Undertaker versus Rusev in a casket match full with controversy, and of course that 50-man Royal Rumble. Unfortunately, I realize that we are now officially out of time, so please make sure that you watch the WWE Network this Friday for the Greatest Royal Rumble event, and make sure you follow us back here next Wednesday at 4:30 for the last Marking Out event of the semester. You've been listening to Marking Out on Com Radio. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.